Hello, my name is Patrice Perkins-Hooker, and I am the president of the State Bar of Georgia. I am here in conjunction with the National Center for Civil and Human Rights to welcome you to our videos on legends who were engaged in the Selma to Montgomery movement. We hope that you enjoy. I'm speaking today with Sheyann Christburg, who was very much an activist involved in the Selma to Montgomery March. Ms. Christburg, thank you very much for joining me at the State Bar headquarters today on behalf of the National Center for Civil and Human Rights.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about what your role was in the march, the planning efforts for the Selma to Montgomery March?
Well, it was when I was 8 years old, growing up in the Selma civil rights movement, when my life was changing without me really even knowing it.
Wow.
Growing up in the midst of experiencing, witnessing racial discrimination, violence, segregation, tears, and even death of people who were fighting for their inalienable rights. I came from a very, very poor family of 8, living in George Washington Carver Project, which was right adjacent to the now historic Browns Chapel AME Church, where everything started for me as that little girl. What really, I'm often asked the question as I speak across the country, how did you become so involved in that movement, being so young? And my response has been, if you were there and witnessed what I witnessed as that little girl, it would strike a chord with any child at any given age. And I really think that through the inspiration and the motivation of Dr. Martin Luther King, who I had the grateful opportunity to meet as that little 8-year-old girl, he was the person who inspired me to become that disobedient child. And Dr. King had a profound impact on my life as that little girl. After having met Dr. King, he gave me hope. He took my conscience as a poor little girl to a new level. Dr. King gave me the inspiration to not only do my best, but to be my best, even in spite of me being poor. And this is what I think motivated me to become involved, because it wasn't ordinary for a child, nevertheless an adult.
Right.
So I think through my having met him when they first came to Selma to start the strategist meetings, because that's when I first met him. When he said to me before he would leave that day after they had their strategy meeting, and I had met him, that there was going to be a movement and a mass meeting that was going to happen in Selma. And little did I know at that time about what a movement was or what that movement was to become. But all that I knew is that I wanted to see that special man that I had met, because, as a matter of fact, he made me feel special.
So you're the little girl that's in the images of the people moving across the bridge, and there's a little girl who was actually holding you at the time when you were going over the bridge in the photos?
Actually, when I participated on the Bloody Sunday March, I was the youngest child on that march that day.
Wow.
And even in spite of my parents trying to threaten and warn me not to participate, I had already made up in my mind that I wasn't going to let nobody turn me around. And I could remember vividly on that particular day going to Brown's Chapel AME Church. And I would normally go and sit on the front pew whenever there was a mass meeting and sing the freedom songs as they would be sung, the melodies of hope, because there was never a meeting or a march where freedom songs would not be sung, neither prayers would be prayed. But I sat on the back pew on that particular day, and I'll never forget the many prayers that were being prayed, the many songs that were being sung, and then there were special instructions given to all of the courageous people who were there to march on Bloody Sunday. And then everyone was asked to go and line up in front of Brown's Chapel Church on that day. And as they were coming out, many of them saw me. They knew me from being at other meetings before, and they were trying to discourage me. But I had already made up in my mind that I wasn't going to let nobody turn me around. And when I went out and I saw them lining up, I saw this lady by the name of Mrs. Margaret Moore, who was one of the teachers who lived in Selma that I knew, that stood against the odds during that time. She was courageous, she was brave, she was outspoken. And I went in, I asked Mrs. Moore to let me march with her, and she even tried to discourage me. But she saw that determination in me, and she just took me by my hand and said, "Come on, child." And we started marching, making our way to the Edmund Pettus Bridge on this day. And I remember vividly being that little girl as we marched, getting closer to the Edmund Pettus Bridge on March 7, 1965. I could see whites on the sidelines throwing things at all of the marchers who were there, trying to distract their attention, calling them names, and even some who were spitting at the marchers. And as that little girl, I was just looking around when those instructions were given for everybody to just keep their heads moving forward. And as we got closer to the bridge, I remember being midway of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And as I looked down, I saw hundreds of policemen with tear gas masks, state troopers on horses, dogs. I became very frightened, devastated, knowing that something would happen. And I remembered the leaders of the march, the now Congressman John Lewis, the late Hosea Williams, and Mrs. Amelia Boynton Robinson, who is now still living. They were some of the leaders of the march on that particular day. And they were asked to turn around. However, the leaders refused. And after the leaders refused to turn the marchers around, racism unleashed its brutality among us. Tear gas had begun to burst in the air. People had begun to be beaten down with billy clubs as if they weren't even human beings. The dogs had begun to push their way into the crowd, along with the horses trampling over people as if they weren't even human beings. And people had just begun to run for their lives, trying to make their way back to Brown's Chapel AME Church. And I'll never forget running. My eyes were tear gas as many others. And I remember just running and crying, being that little 8-year-old girl, devastated, trying to make my way back to George Washington Carver Projects. And as I was running, I'll never forget the late Reverend Hosea Williams picking me up.
That's the picture.
And my arms, as he picked me up, my legs were still galloping in his arms. And I turned to him and looked at him in his eyes. And I said, put me down, in my own childish voice, because you are not running fast enough. And he continued trying to comfort me and others as we were trying to make our way back to George Washington Carver Homes. And I'll never forget, after I had made it back to George Washington Carver Homes, I could see many people standing in their doors, saddened because they knew something had happened. And I could also see the horses and the dogs, state troopers who had made it all the way from the bridge back to George Washington Carver Homes. And there, when I got home, my parents were standing in their door as if they were just waiting for their child to come home. And when I got home, I ran completely through them up the stairs to my bedroom, and they came behind me, trying to comfort me. I was just devastated based upon what I had witnessed on that particular day. And I remembered going to my drawer to get paper and a pencil, and I started writing my funeral arrangement. And I remembered a song that we used to sing, yes, at 8 years old.
Funeral arrangements.
Yes.
That just shows the degree of trauma that you experienced just from being there.
It was the most traumatic experience of my life. But you know what? I reflected on a song that we used to sing many times at mass meetings that reflected the words of old freedom. Old freedom. Over me, over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And you know, that song really taught me the true meaning based upon that experience of what it really meant. And the picture of Bloody Sunday today has never left my heart, neither my mind.
Yeah, I can see how as a young child, I mean, you can just sense and hear and feel the emotions of that day and the impact that it had on you. But what happened to that 8-year-old when she was growing up? Did you stay in Selma? Did you finish school there? What happened to the 8-year-old from then to now?
Well, as a result of that experience and just growing up in the movement, it gave me a great sense of determination to continue to do something to make a difference, even being that young. And what I continued to do was to still, as that little girl growing up, be involved in voter registration. I was very active in schools, and then I was very active in integrating the schools in Selma, Alabama. Most of my siblings came from a poor family of 8. They went to an all-black school, which was called then R.B. Hudson High School.
R.B. Hudson?
Yes. But I was determined not to go to an all-black school. I wanted to be a part of the process and meeting the challenge of integrating the schools. And I went to Parish High School, which was an all-white school. And I met that challenge. I was among a small number of African Americans who integrated that school. And I went there, and I went there knowing that I could not only compete, but regardless of the color of my skin, regardless of how poor I was, I knew that I wanted to become a cheerleader, I wanted to compete to be a cheerleader. I wanted to compete to be active in sports activities, and I did that. I became very active. It wasn't easy at all. Many times I was pushed down the stairs at school. I was called names. I was the only African American in many of my classes there. But yet I was still determined to compete because I knew that I was not only qualified and capable and had the abilities, but I knew that challenges had to be met in order for me to go through that process, and I did it.
Well,
and
if you were able at 8 years old to look down policemen on horses and dogs, then I'm sure that you had developed more than enough skills to deal with teenagers in high school who
Most
were
certainly.
equally as hostile and ill in meaning toward you, but you were a person that said you could keep on going.
I think I was more prepared in character because that character had been built in me based upon what I had experienced being that 8-year-old child.
Right.
And then just being deeply embedded in the inspiration and by the motivation of people like Dr. King, Jonathan Daniels, Viola Luso, Reverend James Reeves, all of these people, as that little girl that I had the opportunity to meet and have an intimate relationship with them, and then later to see them die. It gave me that inspiration, and it built that character. And the thing that helped me the most was that I think it gave my parents a better sense of the determination that they saw in their child that they never really knew. And it was more painful for them than it was for me because they had to come and visit the school, oftentimes the principal, because of the abuse, the racial abuse and the racial injustices that I met as that young black girl being in an integrated school. And nothing was done about it. But I got through it.
Did you have any other sisters and brothers when you were growing up?
Most certainly. I had, there were 8 of us, and I was the youngest girl.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, later, I had a sister who went to R.B. Hudson High. As a matter of fact, she was my oldest sister, and she was among the marchers, the young marchers, during that time.
Okay.
And I had another brother who later dated a white girl, and his life had become threatening. My parents really got him out of town and got him in the service to just save his life. Because, you know, during that time, that was very risky. It could cause you to lose your life.
So when you finished going through Paris, you said, where did you go? Or did you continue your education beyond that?
Most certainly. Dr. King had really, you know, during the 60s, my parents worked in factories to help feed and clothe us. And during that time, for the most part, poor African American parents just wanted their children to be fed and just get a good education, which meant to go as far as you can go, particularly from the 1st grade or kindergarten through the 12th grade. Dr. King inspired me to want to go to college when my parents weren't even thinking. They couldn't even afford to send me to college because back during the 60s, they didn't have the financial aid then. Most middle-class people were able to do that. And that was really not my parents' intention, to have myself or any of their children to go to college. They only just wanted us to go to high school and then get a job. But I was determined to go to college. As a matter of fact, I did well in high school. I graduated with honors.
Congratulations. After all the abuse.
Yes, after
Congratulations.
graduating from Selma High School, because Parish High School turned to Selma High School before I graduated there. And then I went on to Tuskegee Institute, and I graduated with honors at Tuskegee Institute. And even while I had left, before I left Selma, Alabama, I knew that what was instilled in me as a result of my participating in that civil rights movement as that little girl, I knew that I was going to do something different, something that would make a difference, not just in my life, but also in the lives of others. And I was more particularly concerned about working with young people, particularly the disadvantaged young people, because it was other people who had touched my life as that poor little girl. And I wanted to do that for other young people in an effort where they would build self-esteem, self-confidence, promote self-worth, and break out of non-productive patterns and become productive leaders and productive citizens. And after I finished Tuskegee Institute, I developed my own youth development program, and now it's still existing 36 years.
What's the name of it?
Keep empowering everyday people.
Keep empowering everyday people. So KEEP, K-E-E-P.
K-E-E-P,
Okay.
Youth Development Program. And this program has been in existence for 36 years, where I have accepted young people in the program 2 years of age through 18. And now that those 2- and 3-year-olds have come, they are the leaders in the program now. And of course, we have been mentoring for a long time, because many of these young people came out of poor situation, and we encourage academic excellence, entrepreneurship. We place much emphasis on etiquettes, and for people to just be the best, to bring out the best in them. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do in terms of touching thousands of young people's lives and making a difference.
Okay. So did you have a job after you left Tuskegee before you started the program, or you went from Tuskegee to start the program immediately?
Well, actually, when I went to Tuskegee, I started, as I was matriculating in college there, I was still working in the community and voter registration, and doing some other things there in the community. And then when I left, finished at Tuskegee Institute, I came to Montgomery to start working on my master's at Alabama State University, and that's when I started my program in Montgomery.
And your master's was in what?
My master's was in counseling.
All right. Now, if you could just give us just a few words of wisdom that you would provide to young people today based on the experiences that you had as a young person then, or what they should do to make a difference in their lives and a difference to others in the world. Turn around and look directly at it.
My advice to young people today, particularly as I'm grateful to get the opportunity to speak to young people across the country as a result of my book and movie, Selma, Lord, Selma, which depicts my childhood memories growing up in the civil rights movement. And this book has truly raised the consciousness of young people in an effort for them to not only want to know more about the movement, and then they also became aware that there were children and young people involved in that movement. And now, today, 50 years later, after we have commemorated the Bloody Sunday March, and when we look around and see what's happening in this world with the Trayvon Martin situation, the Eric Garner and others, in which young people are not just involved in, but many young people across the country are very familiar and concerned with. My advice to them is, first and foremost, is to look at their history and the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King and what he did with the philosophy of nonviolence that really made the difference back in the 60s, because 50 years later today, the struggle continues. The struggle is not over now. And what I encourage young people to do is know how to respond to problems and challenges. And many of the same. Racism is still at an all-time high. And to use the first method of respecting each other in dialogues, because that's where it all starts. There's a definitive need for young people to start dialoguing. And it doesn't matter what one's opinion may be. Whether you like it or not, you still should respect their opinion. And there's a way to do everything. And that is where character starts. There's where character begins. And we've got to embrace each other and love each other and come together and work together with a real sense of determination and knowing that you can start right now and making a difference, because you do matter. You matter right now.
Thank you very much for this time and your story. Appreciate it tremendously.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I encourage you to get involved and find out more information on the civil rights movement at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. Thank you.